Well, before we get started, I just want to make sure everybody got my handout. Everybody get my handout. It's an email to me from Thomas Fisher. Okay? Yeah. Well, Well, a special good morning and hello again, everybody. I think I had a chance to shake hands with all of you. Welcome in 12-degree below weather on a very important topic. How many of you were here, not here, but May 28th, St. Paul Lutheran? How many of you were at that workshop? Excellent. And was that helpful? Yes, good. And I'm glad you're here again for those of you that were there at St. Paul Lutheran because you cannot learn this enough. The bankers will all tell you that. Law enforcement will all tell you that. I think our goal as a panel, the law enforcement panel, is to do this a couple times a year. Now, here's the format. For those of you who were at St. Paul Lutheran, this is the identical format with maybe one slight wrinkle, but we're going to have the bankers talk first. We want this to be Q&A, but they are teed up to make sure we talk about a couple of different topics in case they don't actually come up. We'll take what seems like a break, but it's not a break. It's going to be Human Services and Candace from Oak Hills, and we're going to stand up here while we do a little bit of transition, and they're going to talk about things from their perspective. And then we're going to go to law enforcement, and we'll have a panel there and let them talk about some different things. Chuck Hanson, I think most of you know him or have heard his name, Brown County attorney. Their whole week is wiped out, and he nor one of his attorneys could be here, so, but he wanted to be. All right, I'm Mark Sandelman. Let's go to the exercise. So I get this email, well, I don't even know the date on it, November 25th. And I had gotten that something almost identical a month earlier. And this first time I go, wow, they're getting good. Delete, block. All of a sudden I get this one. And I go, oh, I wonder if this is going to be the new formula for emails. Now, what makes it attractive to open up and maybe reply to it? Anybody, just shout it out. Money, absolutely. Yep, promise of money. What else is good about it? And I'm saying this as like, I got to tip my hat to him. This one's pretty good. I know it's a scam. They used a real name, Thomas Fisher. How more American can you get? We're searching for you to get you that money, right? What else is on there? Oh, there's a little mystery around it, isn't there? You might be connected. Hey, you might not, but you might. This morning, when you came here, you probably put on some cold weather boots. You probably put on, maybe not a high-vis construction jacket, but a winter coat. Some kind of stocking cap and gloves. And if it rains, you have something called foul weather gear or a raincoat, right? What's my point? We are in an era where when you go on that computer, some would say maybe put on the full armor of God, put on the full armor of what you are dealing with email. You know which ones are safe, you know which ones are good. But it's the ones like this. Open your computer wearing a coat, a hat, gloves, boots. Be protected. Question everything. I think if the panel, all participants can get one thing into all of us. Question everything. If it's too good to be true, it's too good to be true. All right. Renee Thorson, how did we get here? How does New Ulm, with 6 financial institutions, get here with all of you at the table and all are friends with each other?
Well, we're really lucky. Most communities would not do this. We are all sitting here in direct competition with each other, coming to an agreement that this is something we together can focus on head on to protect our community, to help our community, and everybody that lives in it. Great to see you all here again. We had a great turnout in May. I do have a voice today, which is awesome because I did not in May. But in May, I started out with a quote that said, "The punishment for fraud and recovery of stolen funds is so rare that prevention is the only viable course of action." I just wanted to bring this up again because it is so true yet. The only way that we can combat fraud is raising awareness, educating, and helping, when people have questions. I have a news quote today that might hit a little differently. I saw this just the other day and I thought this is perfect for today's event. It says, "Not all scams are strictly about money. Scam artists won't hesitate to take your cash, your love, your trust, your confidence, and everything you thought was real." When I read that, it kind of really, it's a gut puncher. You really have to question everything now. We live in a community where we want to help each other. We want to help our neighbors, but we really do have to question everything now. Scam artists, they want to be your friend. They want your love, they want your trust, and then they want your cash. So just something to really think about when you open your emails, you open your text messages, you get a phone call. It's just hopefully we can answer some questions today. The more questions we have from you guys, what you're hearing, the better, and then we can focus on what you are really questioning. So
Why don't we introduce the panel real quick? We'll just have everybody, we'll start here. So for you OCD types, we'll start here and work our way down.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Crystal Altman, and I work for Citizens Bank, Minnesota.
Good morning, I am Emily LaFrenzen. I work at Citizens Bank, Minnesota.
again, Renee Thorson from Alliance Bank.
Melissa Brolick, Franzen Bank.
Jean Schrader, Franzen Bank.
Becky Hulke, United Prairie Bank.
Carrie Steele, United Prairie Bank.
I'm Chris Jensen. I work at South Point Financial Credit Union.
I'm Bridget Whitney with Bank Midwest.
And I'm Stacy Walter with Bank Midwest.
So, thank you. Yeah, let's give them a round. I think Bridget, you're new here. She's my banker, or one of them, and Sarah Mertz was here last time, and Stacy, you were here, right? Yeah, and we have one other new one. Who's the other new one? There you go, right, Citizens Bank. All right, questions that you have? I'm Phil Donahue, okay? So I don't want this to become the Jerry Springer show, if you catch my meaning. All right, right here. First name?
My name is Susan. With using the credit card, there's the swipe mode, the insert mode, the tap mode, store it in your phone mode, saving things online to certain accounts, or are there better ways, or what's the best way to do that?
So let me just broaden it out a little bit, because this was a big topic May 28th. Credit card or debit card? What should I use online?
I guess it's up to your own personal preference. I mean, you can still be frauded with a credit card just as you can with a debit card. It's, making yourself aware of where you're putting your information, stopping and thinking first. I guess what we tell our clients when you're using your debit card, always use the chip. That is a safer method of using a payment. We've seen skimmers where they have been able to, duplicate the barcode on the back much easier than the chip. But with fraud, it always enhances and they find new ways. So, again, just stopping, thinking where you're putting your information and making sure that it is a site or, a legitimate purchase that you are wanting to make.
So what is a skimmer? I know what it is, but maybe
Yeah,
everybody else
skimmers
doesn't.
are a fraudulent way that scammers can collect your debit card information. Sometimes it's just an overlay at a gas pump where you put your card in. It could be an overlay at a grocery store or any merchant, really. If these businesses aren't checking their terminals very often, I mean, that's where your card can be potentially put at risk. So always good to, even if you're making purchases at a gas pump, they always have a sticker on there the last time it was updated or checked. Just make sure that it's being checked on a regular basis. We've found, some of these gas stations that are maybe, not in a town setting, that are maybe in rural areas that aren't being, checked. We have seen more skimmers with those particular gas stations.
So it's a device that goes inside the card reader, lets you finish your transaction, but now they've got your card information, they've got your password because you typed in whatever the 4-digit code is, and now they can use it later on somewhere else. They're not going to use it at Quick Trip, and Quick Trip would be one that's going to be watching for skimmers with some, I would think, frequency. All right, so I just want to stay on that a little bit, this debit card versus credit card, because yes, it's personal preference, but here's what I moved over to, and this is from talking to some of you. What am I trying to say? A credit card that has a low balance, or what am I looking for? Limit. Yep. So, okay, if I get defrauded, it's only 500, and okay, I can cancel that card, et cetera, et cetera. I'd like a couple more thoughts on the debit card versus the credit card from the panel.
I agree. I think it is personal preference. The other thing too that you have to look at is, like, one thing we tell our clients is, I don't think any of us probably deal with foreign currency anymore. So when you are traveling or using a card online, stick to one card that you're using. Don't put in a bunch of them. And then watch that card. Turn it on, turn it off. But also when traveling, make sure that you're taking multiple forms of payment with you, because if something is compromised, you don't want to be stuck without an additional card. And with the credit card, you can set up, even with the debit card, fraud alerts. You can turn your card on, you can turn your card off. You can get like those push notifications, or you can set up alerts through your online banking that are specific to you and what your preferences are. And the thing too is, you'll work with the credit card company, they'll shut down the card, you will get a new one, or you work with the bank and you know who you're talking to. And the other thing too is, when calling, call the number on the back of the card. Do not, if they call saying, oh, I've got your information, hang up, disconnect the phone call, call them back and do the research, and you reach out to them, not them reaching out to you. Because a lot of times too, that's where these fraud situations come up, and they make you believe that they have your information when they really don't have your information, and you've just now completed the puzzle for them.
So they'll say, we have your information, we just need you to confirm your information. And then it just tailspins from there.
Mark, I'm going to add on that. So
Please.
one, with the online banking as well, on most of our platforms, I believe you can actually lower your debit card limit. So it is standard, maybe your card is $1,500 a day. you can actually lower that in your online banking. You don't want it that high. So that puts you at less risk. You can also turn it on or off. So you went out to eat, you can't find your debit card after you left, it's Saturday night. Turn it off in case somebody does have it. Maybe it's in your car. Maybe the restaurant did hold it for you, but then nobody else can use it. There was one topic that actually leads into what I actually had prepared. When somebody's calling you saying this is your bank's fraud center, make sure it's your bank. I heard 2 messages last week, actually they were live calls. This is your bank's fraud center calling. Your accounts have been compromised. When asked what bank they were, well, we cover multiple banks, multiple accounts of yours have been compromised. Wells Fargo, he went on to list Wells Fargo, Bank of America, Chase, etc. Hang up the phone. They're just fishing for your information. They want you to tell you where they bank. They want you to give you your information.
Very good, excellent. You know, another form of payment, Susan, is also the old, how many of you are still using an old paper check? Yeah, right? It's hard to give those up. And yet, who was it? Where's United Prairie? Check washing. Talk to us about check washing, because I know for a fact we have somebody in this room who described a situation to me that happened to them just recently, and I know it's check washing. What is check washing?
Okay, so check washing is if you put your check in the mail, you put it in your mailbox, you put the flag up, people are driving by, you're maybe now mailing Christmas cards, putting checks in there. It allows them to know that you do have something in your mailbox, which maybe is a payment, a card. They take that check, there's certain chemicals they can use, and it takes that ink off the check, and now they're starting with your check blank. And then they can change the payee, they can change the amount. So one thing that they do have, and I did this morning before work, is Walmart has these pens. These are fraud protection pens. And so what happens is the chemicals do not wash this ink off the check. And there's 8 of them here, and I think I paid $8.96. So in the big picture, super cheap, but also make sure you check your bank statement, because you may just say, oh, I saw this check clear. Okay, that makes sense, but it could be a different amount. The payee could be different. So therefore, again, making sure you're looking and reviewing your bank statement, and then also getting in touch with the bank, because there are forms that then we complete with you, and we send you to the police department then to file a report, and we get that money back into your account. So it's not like you're out the money, but again, taking that ounce of prevention and will save you time on the backside.
I've heard from many bankers, just open your statements when you get them. That will be a big help. But the person that was a victim of the check washing told me, yeah, I used to check the account every couple of weeks, every week, and then we were gone and it was 2 weeks. He said, now I check it 6 times a day. And that's what it takes sometimes, is to get burned.
Can I
Did
say
you have a question? Or were you just trying to get my attention?
I had a question, but it just slipped.
Okay. Good.
Mark, can I say
First
something?
name again? Amy with the New Ulm Journal, by the way. And I did see a couple of other hands, but please, go ahead.
Everyone gets mail, and sometimes you don't get to pick your mail up right away when it's delivered. So there's a thing called informed delivery. So you'll get an email that shows you a front copy of whatever comes in your mailbox. It's amazing, because if something's missing, you're going to know right away, and you could, protect yourself, look into where it went, or report that your mail was taken. So just go to USPS.com and sign up for that. It's a really nice feature if you haven't done it. So yes.
Oh, Denise, let me get the microphone over to you. It helps with you, Kim.
Where you said then to let somebody know
Like you'd report
that
to
you
the police.
didn't get something.
Yeah, you could report it. Yep, that your mail
Report
was,
it to who?
the police, that your mail was missing because someone came and took it
Oh.
then.
Okay.
Also the post office, yep.
All right, we live in a global world, a global community. We get all kinds of stuff in our emails. Do you ever find, are they all from India, China, Colombia? Or are they from every corner of the globe who are scamming you?
That's a tough one, because it is pervasive. I call it an invasive species. Some of you think Iowans are invasive. No, I'm kidding. That's my Iowa joke. I've seen some YouTube videos. There is a gentleman who is an IT expert, and he's created something called a honeypot. He tries to get these scammers to call him, and then they want to take control of his computer sometimes. And he goes, oh, sure, he lets them. Well, he's an IT expert. The moment they take control, triggers a virus that goes throughout their whole computer system. These are calling centers. New Delhi is notorious for this, with 200 people sitting at desks working on commission. And this is not illegal to do. This is not an illegal activity in India. You may think it should be, but it's not. Bank Midwest, what was the topic you guys had? Imposter scams. Let's talk a little bit about imposter scams.
Yeah, so imposter scams, they can be pretty much anybody out there posing as trusted individuals or organizations to trick victims into sending money or sharing your sensitive information, your social security number, date of birth, all of your private information. It's really a growing threat. We're seeing it more and more often. If you're a small business owner, we see it through like business email compromises. If you're consumers, family, like grandparent scams. Have any of you been affected by a grandparent scam?
We've all heard of, they've all heard about it.
Yeah. So then the computer virus scams where your computer freezes and the has a phone number on your screen to call for support, and the person on the other line may say they're from Microsoft. Well, they're imposters of Microsoft. That's kind of an imposter scam. So some red flags to look for are sense of urgency. Eventually it gets to they want money for some service they're offering you. They want your personal information, and there's that sense of urgency. They want payments by gift cards. When everybody asks for a payment via gift card, that's a huge red flag. Gift cards are made for gifts, obviously, or wires or cryptocurrency. If you're not familiar with cryptocurrency, that's just a red flag in itself. And then there's the emotional impact. I've been dealing with a Microsoft tech support scam with an individual. I talked to her yesterday. This happened in the middle of summer. It took away her life savings, her investments, everything. She called me yesterday. She sent all of it out in wire scam. She called me yesterday. She's like, it's the last thing I think about when I go to bed. I can't get it off my mind. I don't know what to do. It's all my money. How can you help me? I just don't have the answer for her. And it's heartbreaking. And, what do you do? It's so emotional impact. It's devastating. And it's these criminals that are getting away with it. So some prevention. I always say there's the 10-second rule, okay? Stop, think, and verify. When something seems off, just take 10 seconds and pause. Think, does this make sense? Does this really sound, too good to be true? Is this a sense of urgency? Just kind of take those moments and verify. If somebody's calling you or texting you, just verify it's a trusted source.
Chris Mullinoff and Renee and I were on Community Affairs a couple weeks ago. And for those of you who are here at St. Paul's Lutheran on May 28th, Chris closed out his portion with a very powerful line, and it has resonated with me over and over and over. Chris asked a victim, when did you know you were being scammed? How many remember what his answer was? Mike at Newcat waves his hand because he edited it. When when I had no money left, when I ran out of money, I realized it was a scam. Stacy, if you wouldn't be object, what was the dollar amount with that woman that got scammed in the summer?
That one was over 70,000. Yeah. The one, right, it went parallel with that. That one was a couple who lost hundreds of thousands, was their life savings as well. And honestly, that one was even more devastating. They were almost, I say, prisoners in their own home because the scammers had them on the phone 24 hours a day. They had to text the scammer who they thought they were their friend. In the morning when they woke up, they had to text them when they went to bed. And they legitimately did that. And what the scam was involving was their bank, which was Bank Midwest, was under investigation, and they had to get their money to a safe place. And so they were convinced, and they had to move their money. They were getting cash and sending it via UPS, wrapping it in tin foil. It was just the craziest thing. And we would question them like crazy, but they were so convincing that they were purchasing a new car from a friend who needed the cash. And they had me, I told them afterwards when it was all said and done, I go, you could have been in the acting because you were so good. I was totally convinced. I've never let this slip by me, and he's like, I'm so sorry, but anyway, but they lost hundreds of thousands of dollars. And what it took for them to come to reality is they got all of their bank accounts from different banks, and then they wanted to get into their retirement. And at that point they said, nope, we're done. And then they got out of that scam. But they were telling them that they could see them when they left. They had eyes in the sky. They said, they got enough information from them. They knew the color of their car. They knew everything about them. So they said, when the lady would drive to the bank, they told her, did you know you had a white car following you when you left? And it was just that little bit of nuggets that they would say. It just drove in their head that they were really watching her. And they told them that they had hackers in their neighborhood, so watch their neighborhood for people suspicious in their neighborhood. And this was a town, they live in a town of less than probably 3,000 people. And so they would tell me, yeah, anybody walking by with a backpack, we knew they were hackers, just really sad. So these are imposter scams. It all started out with their computer was locked up and they called the number. And it took everything they had.
So Stacy covers, I think, if I've understood your position correctly, you're kind of the Bank Midwest Chief of Security?
Well,
Is
yeah,
that a
I'm
way
the
to put
fraud
it?
prevention manager
Fraud
for Bank
okay.
Midwest, and I cover all of our locations, 10 different locations, 3 states. So I'm based out of Fairmont, but I work with all of our branches. So New Ulm being one of our branches, work with all of their customers as well as all of our other locations.
Chris Jensen, if you want to hand the mic down. Chris, you nodded when she said your bank is under investigation. I think that's where you nodded your head and you kind of had this, yep, I've heard this one.
Yeah, I've heard that scam before. Unfortunately, it's more common than you might think. These guys, I always say that some of these scammers are better salesmen than used car salesmen. Like, they are some of the best at what they do, at convincing people of things that aren't real. And once they get their hooks in you, it's really hard to get out of it. I can't count the number of times you feel like you're banging your head against the wall trying to convince someone that, no, what you're involved in is probably a scam. Like, this doesn't sound real at all. And here are all the inconsistencies, and they just don't want to believe it. And one of those that we've seen before is the bank under investigation scam. They have to move their money into crypto. They have to move it into gold or whatever that they come up with to send it. And they're exactly the same kind of situation, sending money wrapped in tinfoil, or they're loading crypto ATMs, or they're, doing things that they normally wouldn't do. And it's terrible. It really is.
Gene, Melissa, down the table there. This imposter scam that Stacy mentioned, I thought I heard somebody kind of lean over and say, what is that? So just give us that quick grandchild imposter scam. how that one works.
The grandchild one has been around for a long time. It's usually
Golden
something.
oldie.
Yeah, it's usually something along the lines of someone calling, either they're calling pretending to be the grandchild, or they're law enforcement or a lawyer or something, and the grandchild is in some sort of trouble in jail, and they're trying to get you to send money. The simplest thing we tell people with that one is just call the family member yourself. Don't believe what they're saying, but they get you so wrapped up in it and so worried that you don't stop and think to do that.
I tell them, hey, I got my police chief's number here. His name's Dave Borkert. Why don't you talk to him? And I know you two can work everything out.
Yeah.
All right. So what are you guys seeing at Franzen? What are some things that are popping up, that we haven't talked about?
Well, we haven't had too much with Bitcoin over by us, but I did have somebody come in a couple of months ago, and he came and he buys cars, and he has these fancy old cars. He comes in and he wants like $20,000. So we do question you when you come in and you take a lot of cash, and we're trying to help you if we don't want you to give your money away, because when it's gone, it's gone. So he said he was going to go buy a old car. So we're okay, fine. He took this cash, and a lot of times the person is on the phone. They come in and they have their phone on yet, and they're listening. They tell you, leave your phone on, go into the bank so I can hear what the banker's saying to you. They'll come in and, they're quiet. You can question them a little bit. I've had somebody write me notes across the counter already because they tell me that they're listening or whatever, and I tell them to hang up right away. Because if we grab the phone, we ask them questions, right away they hang up the phone. We've had somebody come also where they've had the person on their car, and they're listening to them, and they're telling where to go, and they're telling also that there's a car out in the front watching them. There's so many different things. But he came in and he took this cash, and he was told to go over to Mankato. I believe it was a Circle gas station. And he went in there, they have a crypto machine in there. He went in there, and actually the guy that was working there caught him, and there was a machine, or on the machine it said that it was out of order. And the guy up at the front said, well, what are you doing? And he says, I'm trying to use this machine. I have to send this money. And he says, go home. That's a scam. So in that case, that worker there actually helped us out too. So he had come back in, and then we had to close everything he had because he had given all of his information out. You never want to give out any of your information. Once it's out there, we have to close everything. We have to open new accounts. You have to move all your automatics. It's just a huge ordeal. So I guess, if you think that, reach out to your local bank. If somebody will call you on the phone claiming to be from us, and it really isn't us. Your best option is just to say, I'm going to go talk to my family, whatever you need to do, or go to your local bank and ask us if we called them. Because usually we're never going to call you and ask for your information. We already have everything. We're going to want to verify you are who you are. But we're always willing to help. And I'm sure all of these guys here would say too, you can come to any one of us if you have any questions. We're all willing to help. We don't want you to be out of your cash. Just reach out.
I want Melissa to just address that. What's the card, the music card, Apple iTunes? Is that the one that's commonly used? But before we do that, what did Jean just say? Call us, call us, call us, call your bank. I can tell you right now, if you don't bank at Citizens Bank and you walk in and say, I need help, they will help you, even though you're not one of their clients. Each and every one of them are committed to that. They would rather sit at their desk nonstop with all of us walking in and saying, I think this is a scam, can you help me? Rather than have you at their desk crying because you got scammed. Andrew Konitsky with Brown County Sheriff, Chris Mullinoff with New Ulm PD, exact same thing. They would rather sit there and help you decipher what is a scam and what isn't than have to turn in file a report that you got scammed. Our lives, our jobs would be much easier. Chief Borkert thinks it's not documented. He can't document it because not everybody's reporting it. But he's convinced hundreds of thousands of dollars a month leave Brown County, a month. And I think you actually said New Ulm. I'm sorry. Pat, can you just hold? Go with what you know what I'm trying to say, these gift cards.
Oh, gift cards.
Because the retailers are all trained now, but walk us through, and maybe, you know what I'm talking about, right? Who does? What's this gift card? You go to the bank, or you go and buy 10 iTunes cards. Who knows that one? Well, Stacy's seen it all. She's,
Well, I think what you're talking about, I'm not sure, but if you mean if you go to the store and you're directed to go to the store and purchase so many iTunes cards, and hopefully the retailer will stop you telling you it's a scam, but that's where you take the 10-second rule. Does this make sense? Why am I buying $500 at a time in gift cards? Gift cards are for gifts. If you're not buying them for your children, family, friends, and you're buying them to take pictures, if you find yourself buying a gift card, then turning around, taking a picture, scratching the code, taking a picture, and sending it to the person who you'd never met before, you can't get that money back. That money is just like throwing cash in the garbage, okay? And that's a lot of money. I mean, if it's $20, I wouldn't want to throw that in the garbage, let alone thousands of dollars. So if you find yourself driving to another town, which a lot of times they have you do, just don't do it. Hang up the phone, call your nearest bank or law enforcement or a family member just to have a conversation and talk to them. Does this make sense? Because, that's not what gift cards are intended for. And if you look in all the department stores and all the convenience stores near the gift cards, there should be warnings on them too. Next time you're there, look and say they should have warnings about that too.
I think I said Marie before, I meant Melissa. You want to send that down that way? Here's one I want to make sure we cover, okay? Who should be on my account with me? Any adult children here to learn more for their parents besides yourself? So you're here, and the question, many of us are in the glide path of life where we're closer to the end than we are to the beginning. Well, wills, trusts, those are all things, right? Who do we put on the account with us? So at death, they've got access to cash for the funeral home, et cetera, and to pay bills. That's one thing I want to make sure we get feedback on. Yeah, there we go. Pat, what's your question before you jump in?
Okay, well, one thing I wanted to say is that whether you're somebody you meet face to face, at a meeting where they should be there, the scammer is not going to be somebody nasty. They are going to be the nicest people you know, the most honest, the best looking. They're going to be so smooth that you can't believe there's anything wrong with them.
So are you talking about meetings, they want you to meet at a certain physical location?
Like the guy that was at church the other, Shane.
Yes.
I mean, you meet this person, and he's the greatest guy in the world. Got everything, can help you out.
Be careful where you go with it.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, I don't know these people because somebody is nice and solid and smooth. You don't necessarily trust them.
So a little backstory, not a lot. So Pat and Denise and I and a couple of others here go to St. Paul Lutheran. And a guy shows up from Arkansas. And everything seems to be checking out. He's got a job. He's going to get a place to live on February 1st. I've had a chance to drill down a little bit on him, ask him some questions. Chief Borkert and I have talked about the situation. So but you get what Pat is saying, right? Everybody on that phone wants you to like them. And you're from New Ulm. You like everybody. I do. Until they open their mouth. No, I'm just kidding.
We're talking about nice, but I'm thinking about cyberbullying. It sounds like these people, once they get their hooks in you, they're going to bully you.
So do personalities change? Do the hucksters, the fraudsters become go from being very nice, wonderful, oh, I'd love to have them at Thanksgiving dinner type people to, she said it, bullying, do they?
Yeah, in some cases they do. They become threatening when you're not giving them the information that they're looking for. Even when you have that gut feeling and you hang up, a lot of times they'll keep continuing to reach you and call you and call you and call you. I mean, we worked with a client that had probably over 50 some calls from someone that was trying to scam them, and they eventually ended up blocking the number. But these people are professionals. What we talked about earlier, you know, their scammers are in a room, they call it a fraud compound. And we see this in, you know, some of these countries that are starving for money, and they're in a huge room. They have scripts that they go off of. So whatever you give them, you know, they're able to answer with, you know, a good answer and a believable answer. And a lot of times they don't get shut down because they're bringing in funds for that country. So it's a very scary situation that's going on. Again, just stop, think, and if, you know, your gut is telling you something, it's usually right. I did want to tie off a little bit on the gift card scams and a question that came up earlier regarding debit cards versus credit cards. Just recently, we had a client that was scammed out of almost $6,000 in gift cards. He had went into, you know, a local business, and the rep did question him and said, hey, you know, why are you buying all this? And these scammers told them to tell the rep that he was buying it for his daughter. So they did allow him to buy all of the gift cards in total of $5,000 to $6,000, and he had used his credit card. They called the credit card company to see if they can recoup, but unfortunately, once that information is given out on that credit card or on the gift card, there is no way of stopping it. So he is out that money with the credit card company too. So just be very, very cautious when you're involving that kind of money and people are telling you to do stuff, not to trust the bank. We've seen that before. You know, they don't want you to get someone trustworthy involved. They want to get your funds.
How many of you do go on and check your account online? Okay. I think everyone here would like all of you to do more electronic banking than paper and et cetera. Just like they want you to open your statements, go online to your accounts every day. Check them daily. When something is, so here's what happened to me. I had a situation and I called Bank Midwest. I said, okay, it's pending. It hasn't, I think the term is in your world, posted, right? Posted, meaning they haven't paid yet. That's what posted means. So it was pending. I said, what are my options? Because this is illegit. And so what, if they get that situation, what are their options? I got this suspicious feeling, it's pending. Can we cancel it? Yes or no? Anyone?
No, I mean, it depends on how you paid, how we deal with it.
Online, debit card, and now I'm going, no, this isn't legit.
So if it goes through, we can dispute the charge.
So, and this confused me a little bit. I'm not in their world, but they actually have to let it post. They have to let it get paid, and then you call the dispute resolution center, and then you start the paper trail and the process there.
Right, because you paid with your debit card. So if it were a check, and then we could do a stop payment. So again, it all depends on how you paid for that.
I'm getting a scam call. Got a question here.
Is it better to have a credit card or the bank card?
And this is the one where I would really like clarity on this, because I'm hearing two different theories or two different philosophies amongst bankers. Go.
I think I agree with Crystal. It's your preference. You can get scammed on either one, yes. Our credit card companies may be quicker with getting your funds back. There's a good chance that is true.
Okay,
But the same as, with the financial institutions, we can dispute the charge and get it back to you too. It might not be as quick as some of the credit card companies can.
okay. All right, we've got a few minutes left on this panel. Let's tackle that question I asked before. Who should be on the account with mom or dad? By the way, 11 years ago, I did the first workshop, fraud workshop. Chris Molinoff was there. We did it in the other room over there. And, but then I thought, we'll just go around Brown County. So had Lisa Langer, I think, at all of them, did one in Springfield. And she said, there's a widower farmer who got scammed out of $700,000. He had some cognitive impairment, dynamics, living at home. All right, I die. Who do I want on, and my wife is gone. Who do I want on that checking account to help get things done?
Before we go into this, Mark, how
Please.
many of you know power of attorney ceases on death?
Good.
That's good, because I think a lot of people do not realize that. So there is this importance of getting a joint owner on your accounts.
So power of attorney, I'm glad you brought that up. Power of attorney. Your adult child has a POA. You might refer to it as a DPOA, a durable power of attorney. And they can more or less act on your behalf. And if you trust your adult child who has that POA, you should have a POA. That's, like she said, that ceases on death. From there, okay, power of attorney. You're now at Minnesota Valley Funeral Home. Who is the term we used to use was executor or executrix. Many states have turned that term into personal representative. So now, who's your personal representative? And we've laid that background or foundation. Who do we want on that checking account with us? And what do they need to bring in?
Again, this is going to go to personal preference because everybody's situation is totally different, whether they're married, single, do they have children, do they not have children? Who is that trusted financial person that you trust or to turn to that is going to help you? The other thing too is it can change. So if you have a child and that child either A, passes away, or B, you have a falling out with that child, it really is, you can change it. But again, if you come in and say, oh, well, it's in the will, we don't see the will. And this is account specific. So you could have multiple accounts and you could have them structured differently. So it just really is personal preference. And what have you communicated with the people that you trust to know what your wishes are once you're no longer here? Or if you become incapacitated, that's the other thing too, is, with the power of attorney and then what happens when you're no longer here.
And the other thing I would encourage you all to do is whoever is going to be interfacing with the bank, bring them in. Let them meet your banker. Let them know. Say it right in front of that adult child to the banker. This is my personal representative when I die. Another reason a child might not, you might change is, if they move to California, it's going to be more helpful if somebody's a little bit more local. Bridget.
I also wanted to touch on if you choose not to have that joint owner, we have some that just really don't want to have that because of family dynamics.
Okay, so what do we do? What do they do?
We also suggest definitely to add beneficiaries. It makes it so much easier in the long run for the family members to access the funds quicker without having to go through the probate process or having to set up a personal rep. Sometimes there's no need. So it just makes it so much easier to definitely at least list beneficiaries, if not also a joint owner, because again, the power of attorney does cease at death. So
I'm not licensed to practice law, but just remember there are dynamics around an adult child who's married to a spouse that you do not like or you think they might be getting a divorce. Just kind of, there's a lot of things to factor in.
And sometimes too, if you don't want to add someone to your account, you could potentially set aside a separate account to say, okay, I think it's going to cost X amount when I pass away to, get my estate settled. Then you can list beneficiaries on that account. Again, having those conversations with the people that you choose to say what your wishes are, and then they have access to money. Because once it's paid out to the beneficiaries, like Bridget said, that's then the beneficiaries' money. They don't have to pay your bills or your outstanding
That's right.
items.
That's right.
It personally becomes their funds.
All right, we need to wrap up this portion. Any last questions? Jim Bartles, congratulations on your award. That was a nice article in the New Ulm Journal.
As you were talking about the mail fraud and the check washing, okay? And I remember a few years ago, I questioned something. I called the post office, and they said, we strongly recommend, and a lot of people like to write checks, as I do. Not all my bills, but a lot of them, I prefer to write checks, so I know exactly when and all that. They said, if you are sending a check in the mail, drop it off at the post office. Don't put it in the mailbox. And that, I think, is a really good piece of advice for those of us who still like to write checks.
Thank you, Jim.
Can I say something?
Great suggestion.
I just
Yes.
want to let you know that those of you that still write checks, remember all of your information's out on that check. You have your routing number, your account number, your address is on there. They know everything about you. So that's another reason why, you could have a credit card or a debit card. Just remember that. It's all out there. Anybody that washes it out has everything they need to know about you.
Very good. I'm not seeing any other hands. I think that was a great way to close it off. I do have one from the New Ulm Journal.
The latest trending thing is pets. People are selling pets online that don't exist, or they're giving sob stories. We found this cat. We need money. We don't have no money, but this cat needs your money, to get whatever fixed or helped. Have you heard about any of this?
Anyone? I saw Renee nodding her
it
head.
sounds like Facebook. Yeah. So Marketplace it can be a huge scam. A lot of items being sold that aren't really for sale. I think I saw something similar with a pet that needed help. Again, I like the 10-second rule. Think about it. You really need to help a cat that you don't know. And the pets too, there's a lot of puppies and everything online. Be cautious on it. Contact the person directly. Don't use Facebook Pay, Facebook Messenger. Get a phone number. Go see the dog before you buy it.
One scam that came up, and then we're going to wrap this portion up. A farmer was probably, maybe not, but found a used tractor that was perfect for him that he needed, $67,000. Yep. Just wire me the money, it'll be here, you come and get it. Wasn't there. There was nothing at the location. Nothing. All right, very good. Let's have a nice round. Oh, yes, Dennis, right? Yes. Okay.
Is there such thing like through the bank, like a secured check? They got a little emblem on there?
Okay. Hand that down. Yeah, there we go. United Prairie.
Yes, you can we all order checks through check companies, and there are secure checks. I know one thing that, it seems like your check cost is going up and the checks that you receive then in the mail are going down. But there is a higher cost associated with those secure checks, which can be done. The other thing too, and again, this is again personal preference, but you can set up bill pay if you do online banking, and then they create checks. And sometimes when they create those checks, they have a central account, so it's a different routing number and a different account number on the bottom of the check. It's not your information. It's coming from your account, but it's not your information that's on those checks. So, but yes, there are those secure checks.
Excellent. Let's give it up for the bank panel. I did, last minute, I saw a hand go up, Columbia University, and my apologies. As they're coming down off the stage, what was your question?
I was just wondering if the GoFundMe accounts are always legitimate?
Oh, that's an interesting one. GoFundMe. I don't think I've ever heard of us. I mean, the technology, I think, is secure, but the person on the other end trying to get you to send money, of course, that's as good as their character, right? Am I right? So,
Yes and no. I mean, excuse me. The technology itself may be secure, but like you said, the person on the other end may or may not be who they're representing to be. A lot of times you see, especially if it's like a news story, if you see, you know, maybe there was a family whose house was lost in a fire, for example, you might find 3 or 4 different GoFundMe accounts out there if you search them. You have to figure out which one is the right one if you're going to donate to them and do your research on it, because those other ones are almost certainly just scammers trying to profit off of someone else's unfortunate news. So,
yeah, our church body has a disaster relief fund that we can give to, but I was born in St. Peter, and when that tornado hit in 1998, April 30th? Was it March 30th? Something, right? March 28th, thank you. Because I wasn't living here, and my brother said, yeah, Comfrey, I think, you could kind of erase it off the map. But good friends in St. Peter said after their experience, the only 2 charities they'll give money to are the Red Cross and the Salvation Army. They won't give it to anyone else. So these GoFundMe accounts, they wouldn't be paying attention to. Anyways, all right, we really got to wind up this portion and move on to the next one. I need Candace, I need Aaron, I need Molly, if you guys would come up. So we got kind of a 2-hour window here. You are allowed to get up and use the restroom, get more coffee. I don't want to take any donuts home. May 28th, I ran out of food. Today, I'm going to be taking food home with me. All right, why don't you guys come up here, kind of get in the center there. There you go. Yeah.
I don't know who you want to start.
I
can start. We'll say name.
I still need your attention, but you can move around a little bit. All right. So this is Molly Stimpert, Aaron Kistner, thank you, and Candace Schoweiler. With the first 2, Aaron and Molly, are with Brown County Human Services, and their old bosses here, I think, Tom Henderson, right? And then Candace is, of course, at Oak Hills. So, Candace, one of the things you talked about last May, and I just noticed around the audience, this visible, like, oh, that is so good to know. Talk about the training that your employees get around this topic of being fraud, because you've got vulnerable adults being defrauded and scammed. Tell us a little bit about what you do at Oak Hills, and I'm sure it's mandated at other nursing homes, assisted living. I'm sure all of them are mandated to do this training.
Yeah, so there's regulations around noticing this type of behavior. So all of our staff go through training every year and upon hire to, pick up on any type of fraudulent behavior, whether that's maybe someone in our assisted living who's somewhat independent yet, maybe a change in their behavior, different things like that. We try to really keep an eye on that. And then, with the
Candace,
residents.
pause one moment. That was an excellent point. Mike, Stephen, Newcat, this is to the audience, to the adult children watching this. Candace just said something significant. Change in behavior. That is a key to watch for. So if the adult children watching this video kind of, yeah, mom and dad are changing a little bit. Okay, don't let that be just, mom and dad are changing a little bit. Let that be a flag. Continue, please.
Yeah, and then, even with residents in the nursing home, some of them that may have some cognitive disabilities, they may have a family member who's involved, and we really keep an eye on that as well, because we have had situations where maybe a son or a daughter did not handle their funds correctly. So we are vulnerable adult mandated reporters. So it is our job to pick up on any of that type of behavior and report it. So we do report anything that we are suspicious of. Sometimes it's legit, but there's times where we have found that we have prevented something that may have gone really wrong, and sometimes it's been a little late.
Just give us a broad outline of what a vulnerable adult is, because most people, I think, vulnerable adult, somebody 75 and over, some cognitive, that's about, but a 22-year-old can be a vulnerable adult.
Oh, absolutely. My 15-year-old daughter, I shared this story last time. She's 21 now, but when she was 15, her, cell phone was her, lifeline to everything. And she got hacked with Instagram or Snapchat or something, and was panicked because it got locked up. She couldn't communicate with her friends. And when she was panicky, I panicked. And yeah, it was like that Microsoft, but it was Apple, I believe. And so we called the number, and it was a scam. And so we were scammed out of maybe like $95, which, wasn't terrible, but it's embarrassing that we fell for it. But that is why it's really important that it happens to anybody, and it happens to all ages. So don't feel embarrassed, and, make sure that you tell somebody, because it happens to everybody. And another thing that I always tell people is somebody else's emergency is not your emergency. Step back. If it does not feel right, step back. And, they had said the 10-second rule. I take a little longer because if it doesn't feel right, it's not your emergency.
Now, one example of when I helped a complete and total stranger. The Aldi Mankato was getting they had taken more space, they were refitting it, they actually had to close it down. And this woman is pushing a cart with 3 kids. She gets up, unloads everything, I'm right behind her. She looks at the teller and she goes, I left everything back in Mankato. I'm going to have to drive back and come back. I looked at her, you got 3 kids, you got a cart full of food, I'll pay for it. Here's my card, just mail me the check. I saw Tim, if you know Tim, he's one of the original ones. And I said, well, I'm out $85, whatever it was, right? The very next day, the check came in the mail. There are times when you can trust a stranger, but when you can't see them, you're on the phone or on a computer with them? No. All right, Aaron, Molly, I don't know if you become therapists in your office. And here's what I mean by that. If you get scammed out of money, it is going to at least go one generation down. It is going to impact your children. Your children, most of them, are not worried about getting an inheritance. But they don't want you to get scammed. What prompted this whole workshop concept, I'm sitting with a client, and she tells me about her parents getting scammed. And she said her and her sister have PTSD over it, because they felt helpless. These scams carry or go down generations. That's one of the reasons that everybody wants you here at these workshops. Talk about that a little bit. What do you hear from people?
Yeah, so I'm our intake social worker at Brown County Human Services, which kind of makes me the social worker for people who don't have a regular social worker. So people can call, and if you have questions about scams, like I think I was a victim of a scam, or I think I have a family member who was victim of a scam, then part of my role is to help get you connected with helpful resources, talk you through that. So talking through, have you talked to the bank? Have you stopped payment on that? Have you changed your accounts? And sometimes people need help with that because it becomes very overwhelming. So we can help facilitate that, whether it means maybe me and that person are sitting in a room together and they're calling their bank. And then I'm helping them through that process so that they can get things canceled or do whatever it is they need to do. Or just sometimes people call because they're concerned about a loved one and they want to know, what steps could I take? So sometimes that can be a common phone call that I get is, I have elderly parents, they're not very tech savvy, I believe they're a victim of a scam or that they might be susceptible to a scam, so what can we do on the front end to help them? And a lot of it is things that the bankers talked about this morning, just extra protections around bank accounts, having somebody else on the account, getting notifications whenever a card is used or something is debited out of an account. All of those things are things we can help talk people through, and then also provide information, referral resources for those individuals. And I just want to say, like, even yesterday I noticed just how often we can become victims of scams because I was helping somebody trying to find some alternate housing, and we're on Facebook Marketplace, and there are just so many scams on there, you can't even trust it anymore. There was a home that was listed on there for rent. The rent looked to be pretty cheap. Home appeared to be in New Ulm. It is a home in New Ulm. But I'm like, oh, that doesn't, $750 a month, that doesn't sound right. Well, when I do a little extra digging, that house is actually for sale on Zillow. And so a scammer found it on Zillow. They made their own post on Facebook Marketplace about the house, put it for really cheap rent to try and get people to respond to it. And then oftentimes those scammers will tell you that you need to send some sort of deposit before you can look at the house, that they've got 5 people in line, so you got to go quick. And it can just be really easy to fall victim to those things. I've seen it too with like Airbnbs or Verbos. If you're trying to get a vacation home, you really have to look closely and make sure that you know who you're talking to, or even to take an extra step to find out, is this a scam? So even for folks who are looking to move to an apartment, to downsize, or move to a different house, they're looking for a rental, people can come and ask for help if they think something's a scam, and we can try and help get to the bottom of that by contacting the landlord or trying to provide extra information on what you can look for to see if that particular ad might be a scam.
It sounds like you're like a Sherpa or a tour guide. And I mean this, you got questions, I don't even know where to start.
And we
Well, then now you know where to start.
And we don't have all the answers either. You know, we're not necessarily experts on it, but we know what other resources are available to help point you in the right direction.
Right.
And then Molly here is more of an expert with our adult protection role. So she's working with individuals who are maybe considered vulnerable adults who become victims of scams.
Oh, yeah, interesting, Molly. Take us through that a little bit, unpack it.
Sure, yeah, I can do that. So I am one of the lead adult protection investigators for Brown County. There are a couple other that also will investigate some of these fraud allegations as well. I do want to just go back a second and answer Mark's question about what a vulnerable adult is, just to be a little more thorough on that. So as far as our definition, a vulnerable adult would be anybody over 18 that typically has some sort of a either mental health condition, a disability, somebody who has a memory impairment. And typically, this is really impacting their life in some way. So as far as fraud goes, they've lost money, they're going to lose money. Because of the fraud, they can't pay their bills anymore. They're going to lose their house, they're going to lose their apartment, their electricity has been shut off because all of a sudden all of their money is gone and they can't afford that. They can't afford food. It generally really becomes a huge impact on their lives. And so what happens is usually Erin, as our intake person, will get reports, and those reports come from the Minnesota Adult Abuse Reporting Center. So I saw a bunch of you took our brochures on that, and that will give you a little more information on what MARC is. And it also just will explain some of the things about what they do. So typically, they are the reporting center for adults who are possibly vulnerable. And this is only a part of Minnesota. I don't know if they have this in other states, but all vulnerable adult reports go to MARC, the Minnesota Adult Abuse Reporting Center. MARC goes through those reports, figures out which county this person lives in, and then they send it to the correct county. So if this individual is in Brown County, then that report comes to us. And then we review that report and decide if this is an individual that needs some more assistance. Oftentimes, when it is somebody that we think, oh, they probably are vulnerable and may need some more assistance, we kind of step in and we try to assist that person as much as possible. Sometimes that is reaching out to family and see if family is willing to help. Reaching out to the bank. We work very closely with the banks. We work very closely with the police department, the sheriff's office, to see if there's anything we can do to help protect them from future fraud. Usually, often by the time it comes to us or the police department, they have already lost a significant amount of money. So my job is to work with that individual and try to prevent future fraud from happening. I typically will visit that person. I work very closely with them, and we come up with a plan together. Other than working with family, police department, sheriffs, sometimes we'll have to work with the hospitals. Other options might be as part of a last resort, rep payee, if that person is unable to manage their funds independently.
Very good. I want to transition to law enforcement, but before we do, questions for Human Services or Candace?
I think it's a sad commentary that families are so disconnected today. It happened with my husband's mom. She lives in upstate New York. A guy came to her house, said he was going to put tarmac on her driveway, and of course he did a really shoddy job and he charged her an exorbitant amount. People that come door to door, is there anything you can tell us? Because we've been, even on Straight Street where we live, we've had people come to our house from out of town as contractors, and right away that's a red flag. We've got good contractors right in New Ulm, but what would you say to those poor people?
Well, show me your permit. I think they have to have a peddler's permit. Yes, yeah, they do in some towns. I don't know New Ulm for sure, but I would guess there must be a peddler's permit they would have to get. But the question was really to you guys, so.
I would agree with Mark. Try to get some more information, see if they have any documentation of where they work, whether they're a real business. Also, I think an important thing to do is talk to your neighbors, talk to the people in the area. Have they worked with these individuals? What are their thoughts? Just ask questions. Make sure you ask questions. Some of you might not be very techie or work on the internet, but if you do, you can always look up this individual, look up maybe whatever their business is, see if it is a real business. Otherwise, I would caution people to, if somebody just randomly comes up to your house, I would caution you to whether that's a real
11 years ago when we did the first workshop, this was actually a big topic. We talked about this a lot. Until you brought it up, I had forgotten about the old, I've got some extra driveway coating. I just finished up a project. I'll let you have it real cheap. And it's not real cheap, but you hear the word, I'll let you have it real cheap. And, yeah, my driveway does need it. And it could be other things too that they will drive up and down the street.
If there's been like a hailstorm or there's been some sort of, some sort of disaster that has happened in your community, they really come out of the woodwork then. And so then, you really need to be aware of the scammers during that time for sure.
Most of the roofing companies on those hailstorms are legitimate because I experienced it up in Winthrop. We had a significant hailstorm and probably 12 to 15 roofing companies were walking up and down the streets. And the one I went with, I said, there's no way your company could do them all. We need all these roofing companies right now. And as far as I could tell, all were legit. Any other questions up here? Yes, sir. And we got Vancouver on the front of his sweatshirt. I don't know what that's about, but
how do you handle a situation if someone wants to vote and they're at Oak Hills, for example, they're vulnerable now, they registered to vote, they feel real strongly they want to vote. How do you handle that?
Yeah, so we actually have election judges come into Oak Hills, and we have party neutral, or we have a mix of, so that it's not persuaded on one way or another. So we do have election judges that come in and help people vote.
very good. All right, I want to get the law enforcement up here. Thank you. Candace Schoweiler, Aaron Kistner, and Molly Stimpert.
Thank you, guys.
When we did this at St. Paul Lutheran, Molly and Aaron hardly said a word, and I thought, oh, they got so much good knowledge. So this was the little tweak in the format that I alluded to. Yeah, right in the middle there. I seem to remember a much fuller table. I don't know why I remember that, but why don't you go right in the middle there, Andrew, for NewCat purposes, right between Chris and Dave? Oh. Yeah.
I think last time we had the social workers up here with them.
Oh, that's what it was. Thank you. Yeah. So by way of introductions, New Ulm Police Chief David Borkert, Senior Investigator for Brown County, Andrew Konitschke, Senior Investigator for New Ulm Police Department, Chris Mullinoff. Chris and I go back a long ways. Wow, 11 years ago. And it hasn't stopped, has it?
No, it is not.
Wow. All right, we're going to use the microphone. So, let's do this. Questions for law enforcement. Let's just jump into it. Yes, please.
Maybe it's the Greek side of me, but I wish we got spankings back or whippings or something. When people do this, when they do this, they don't seem to be punished. That's why she was talking about prevention first. What is the punishment that we can do, or should we change legislation or something? It's so cruel and wicked what they're doing.
Well, that was a big topic, wasn't it, last time? And remember my balance issue. It's called maldebarkment. I had Denise Bartle say, look, I have a balance issue. My doctor never told me about maldebarkment. And I said, well, go look it up. She texted me. She goes, you're right. There is something called maldebarkment. I said, I know. It's a slight, every now and then, I have a slight balance. Most of the time during the day, I'm pretty good. All right. So and Chuck Hansen was up here too. And what did we learn last time from the panel? Once it gets to them, there's not much they can do. But let's unpack it a little bit, because we're here to be more preventative. Chris, lead us off.
Yeah, I would agree with what some of the bankers said at the beginning that, really the head off fraud, it's at the front end, education, and trying to teach people how to identify these scams because on the tail end, that's just right. 99% of the time the money's gone. We have had a couple instances that 1% where we were able to recover money, but that's typically through postal services catching cash being sent, and then that's just the luck of the draw. 9 times out of 10, the money's gone. As far as accountability goes, I would love to hold a lot of these people accountable. Unfortunately, when we conduct these investigations, we follow the money trail, and we kind of call going down the rabbit hole. It always ends up going overseas, and our legal capacity for demanding records and things ends at the border. We don't have any cooperation from some of these other countries, and like Mark said, India, anyone that they come from, they don't cooperate with law enforcement, and sometimes it's incorporated in in the way the country operates. So unfortunately, a lot of them do not get caught, and it's very frustrating.
So we've got Brown County senior investigator. We got a New Ulm Police Department senior investigator. I'm sure you guys collaborate with each other, but help us understand, Andrew, what your role is. I would guess that you're kind of, if you hear about something outside of New Ulm, it's probably going to land at your desk.
Right. Yeah, our jurisdiction kind of begins with wherever the victim lives. So if the victim lives within the city limits of New Ulm, the New Ulm Police Department would be your primary law enforcement agency to contact. If you live outside of the jurisdiction of New Ulm, or if you live in Comfrey or Hanska or one of the towns that would be covered by the sheriff's office, then that would be our jurisdiction.
So what are some things that you're seeing that maybe we haven't talked about here that might be unique to a rural climate?
Well, I think the thing about checks is a big deal. We've recently started to see these criminals are somehow getting a hold of somebody's checks that has their address, their routing number, their account number. They're washing these checks, or they're changing the amounts and who they're sent to. Sometimes the signature on the check may even be fraudulent, but they're getting a hold of the account numbers, and they're making these checks. And does anybody in this room use mobile banking? Okay, mobile banking is a new thing where you can deposit checks through your mobile phone, and you contact with your bank, and you take a picture of the check, and you take a picture of the back of the check with a signature, and you put all the information in, and you send it in for deposit. Well, then you just hang on to the check, and then the banking system does their thing, and the money generally gets deposited. So what's happening now is that I'm starting to see some people, they're getting a hold of people's checking account stuff, and they're getting notified that people are trying to do mobile deposits with their checks. And a lot of this stuff is happening out of state, and it's really hard to track down who is doing this, and it's really hard to track down how they even got your information. They could have stole it from the mailbox. You could have mailed a payment to a contractor somewhere, and I don't know, maybe somebody associated with him could have got that information. So yeah, that's kind of a new one that's starting to pop up a lot.
Okay. Chief Borkert, I know you're reading a lot of reports as a police chief, but there was a time when you actually did a real work, I think, right? Weren't you an investigator yourself?
I was.
Yeah, so, how do we tackle this problem?
Well, I think it's very complex. To answer a question that came up earlier, or maybe just to expand on that, you talked about the accountability. Right now, when we talk about the legislative process and bringing up concerns, I don't know if you've been following this, but they're looking at changing sentencing guidelines significantly. Like we're talking about cutting the stuff in half. So these individuals right now, when they talk about nonviolent offenders in prison, what can we possibly do? This is an outrage. I don't know many that, because the sentencing guidelines have really changed to the point where they basically want more community corrections, which I guess philosophically, I'm not necessarily completely opposed to that, the concept, but the accountability has changed significantly, and we're going to see a big shift if all of this passes. So to kind of give background on that, I don't want to use up all the valuable time, but when they're talking about closing Stillwater State Prison, if some of you may be aware of that, they're not building another prison. So what they're doing is they're going to have to shuffle these inmates, and they're going to have to try to find a way to accommodate and house them. They'll be using St. Cloud, the other parts of the prison system, but ultimately they're looking at releases. And in addition, they can't bring more people in, so they're looking significantly. The Chief of Police Association, the Sheriff's Association, we're addressing it right now because we see a lot of problems on the horizon. So I'm just bringing that up. I'm not trying to get political. I'm just sharing a concern that I have. You make your own decision on that. Consider maybe reaching out to legislators. I think it's a big deal. So when we talk about the accountability, if we're fortunate enough to be able to find the individual and we have to have probable cause to make an arrest or for that person to have a formal complaint. Chuck Hansen had mentioned it last time. That's the basis for a complaint. So we have to reasonably believe that that person in question committed the crime. And, to be able to do that's significant. It can't be a hunch. We have to be convinced. We have to be able to demonstrate that to the court. The burden of proof in court is beyond a reasonable doubt. So that's even a higher standard. And all of this is important for, going back to constitutional law. We have a constitution in place. I'm thankful for that. But that process, as far as actually bringing someone for conviction, it's a very long process. And, if the individual, as my partners here have mentioned, if they're in Nigeria or Canada or wherever, we can't extradite. We can't bring that person back there. It's another sovereign nation. And so that makes it very complex.
So 10 to 15 years ago, I was doing jail and prison ministry with my church body. And I remember being at a workshop where this woman who is now part of doing jail and prison ministries, she did time in Shakopee, which is the women's prison. And somebody asked her, she was telling this story, and she went in as a teen. What's that teen program called?
Teen Court?
Yeah, I think so. But then as an adult, she got, in Shakopee for 3-4 years, and somebody asked her, well, what did you learn in Shakopee? She said, how to forge checks and 2 meth recipes. That's what I learned at Shakopee. My point, these guys that might get caught who are doing the frauds and scams are telling the others how to do frauds and scams. It's an education center sometimes in those prisons. Questions for our panel? I got that sun fighting me. Right here.
How hard is it for you to get a warrant or something to try to nail down how somebody's been scammed?
We would have to be able to determine the identity of the person, the suspect, until they, once they get into court, then they're the defendant. But we'd have to be able to, first of all, confirm identity of the individual that's involved. And then the rules of extradition, actually, Andrew probably, as a sheriff, would have a better idea as far as the rules of extradition, but not everybody can be extradited. We have to be able to, like if they're in Texas, we have to be able to, there's rules we have to follow to be able to bring them back to Minnesota. If they're from a foreign country, basically it's for all practical purposes impossible, especially for like when we're talking about white collar crime. Sure.
Just to add on to that, so, when I'm investigating these things and I talk about going down the rabbit hole, we're looking at email addresses they provided, phone numbers that they've called you on, and there's ways that we can track where those things come from, and a lot of times they're internet numbers. But there's also cases where you've actually wired money to somebody that's in the United States. And I've investigated those as well. And things that I've found, as Dave said, these things are very complex. And oftentimes what these criminals will do is they'll use what we call mules. And that's basically another person that's involved in another scam in themselves. So you're sending money to one person, thinking that maybe they're the mastermind, when in fact they're getting money, being told that they're going to receive this money, and then they send it to another person. And sometimes these can go as deep as 2, 3, 4 people before it goes overseas. So it can really pass a lot of hands. Just to give an example, last summer we had a lady that was persistent in sending money to a person that she thought she was helping, and we tried to convince this person that it was a scam, and we just could not do that. But I was able to obtain enough information to find out where the money was going, and it was going to a gentleman down in Texas, and it ended up being a retired veteran. And I contacted the agency down there and found out that he was actually out $250,000 from a scam himself, taking a second mortgage out on his house, and he was really in deep into another scam, and then it was going overseas from there. So just because you send money and it goes somewhere in the U.S. Doesn't necessarily mean it's actually starting here. Just like they say all roads lead to Rome, most scams all lead overseas, unfortunately. So.
To kind of answer your question more about warrants, earlier this year I had a case where an individual from Brown County had been scammed out of some money, and she was somehow convinced to take this money in cash, and she decided to meet this individual just outside of Rochester, Minnesota. They met at a Quick Trip, and she actually handed this cash over to him. It was kind of involved how they got to that point, but Quick Trip has great security cameras, and I was able to get the license plate of the guy that showed up. He came from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, I believe. And the license plate actually came back to an individual with an address in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So through the investigation, I got the guy's driver's license photo and compared it with the guy in the video, and they appeared to be the same person. And I also checked the tax records for the address in Milwaukee, and it was also associated with the same person. So I had a pretty good case where I'm pretty sure this guy, whether he was the mastermind of the thing or what, but he was a piece of the scam. So when he came to get the money, I was able to get an extraditable warrant from our county attorney's office. And we entered the warrant into the national system. I called the Milwaukee Police Department and told them about the warrant. They said they were going to try and check and see if they could pick the guy up. To this day, I haven't heard anything. It's difficult because the loss amount was $25,000. And Chief Borchert talked about sentencing guidelines and crime severities and these kind of things. So when it comes down to it, we're all operating on public funds. There's only so much to go around. We all have major things that we have to deal with within our county. We have to make good decisions. We have to be smart about our taxpayer dollars and make sure that we're using it in the best way. Now, if 2.5 years later this guy gets arrested on this warrant and he's in Florida, is it good tax dollars for the sheriff's office, which has probably less than 20 sworn police officers, to go down there and pick this guy up and bring him back to Minnesota? And that's only if he waives extradition. If he fights extradition, then there's a little bit of a court battle where you have to get governor's warrants and you have to kind of present the reasons why we want them back in the state. It generally happens, but it takes time and it takes money and it takes people to do it. And when it comes right down to it, we'll talk with the county attorney's office and as a sheriff's office, we'll talk about whether or not we can get this person back here and whether it's even going to be worth it. At the end of the day, sometimes it's just we got to cut our losses because we have other things to do. And unfortunately, what should be taking over is some federal law enforcement, because we're talking about interstate lines and these kind of things. But, federal people aren't going to touch anything unless, you're in the millions and millions of dollars. So you're right in that gray area where, feds aren't going to be interested, and it's too much of a hassle for us to really follow through with it and get any kind of a good resolution.
So an ounce of prevention is better than a pound of cure, I think the old saying is. Questions? There we go. Right here, right here, right here. I got the mic. I'll bring it to you.
Our son lives in Florida, and last summer, we called our son, "Oh, you're selling your 20 acres on the side of ours?" And he said, "No." There was a sign on 14 and on 29 and in front of his land for sale, a realtor from Redwood. Now, how did they get all Scott's information? That I can't understand how. It was a realtor from Redwood Falls.
And it was tillable land that was for sale? Yeah, well, go to acres.com. You can look up you could pay a monthly fee and go to acres.co, I think it is technically, but if you put in com, it'll still come up, and I can go anywhere in the country and I can look up who owns the tillable land. You can pull out a plat book. You can see who owns the tillable land, and you can see who lives on the land, and it might not be the same person. So it's not as hard as, I'm a C+ in a public high school, and I can figure that out.
Yeah, but how they got all his information? Someone was selling it for under Scott's name.
Any thoughts on the, up at the panel there? Andrew, if you could just hold it a little closer, just for the new cats.
Yeah, well, like we said, there's public information out there available on all of us. Anybody who owns property in Brown County, you can go to the website and you can look up an address on the website, and it'll tell you the address, it'll tell you the parcel number, it'll tell you the last time it was sold, it'll tell you who sold it to who and how much it was sold for, and it'll tell you who the primary taxpayer is. And generally, if I'm looking at that, and if the primary taxpayer's address is the same as the property address, that tells me that that's probably their home. Okay? If I look at a piece of property and their primary tax payer's address is different than the address of the property, then that tells me that's probably a piece of land in their family and maybe nobody lives on it. In Brown County, we have several family farms that have just kind of been abandoned because the parents move into town, and the children or the sons are still trying to work the farm, and there isn't anybody there, and they got a lot of valuable stuff out there. So on top of public information that we can find out about people, anybody here in Facebook, you can look people up on Facebook, and people put an enormous amount of information about themselves out on Facebook. If they're realtors, if they're business people, they're putting themselves out there to try and get business and to try and promote their career. It works well, but it also works for the people that have got plenty of time to figure out as much as they can about you and come up with some scam and make it look like legit, because maybe they're using, your pictures off of your, your realtor website, or they take your picture from your Facebook page and they create their own Facebook page and mimic everything that you have. I mean, these nightmares are out there. It happens. And you're talking about people that have no jobs, and all they do is sit around and see how they can, scam somebody out of something.
I remember in May, we got onto the topic, I think some of the bankers are still here, and I don't remember where it was in the workshop, but we got onto the topic of obituaries. Anybody remember that when you were here? Yeah. And what do we a lot of times do with our obituaries? Or we haven't done them yet, but what do we see? The survivors, right? And where they're from, their full name, their city. And that came up last time as being one of the ways I think that scammers and fraudsters were harvesting information. And the one thing that jumps out to me right away is, and so in, give me a small town in Texas. Fisher, Texas. Read the obituary. I'm in Texas. They're going to be at a funeral. Might be a good time to hit their house. talk a little bit about the obituary, because I do see now more and more people just saying survived by, and then not giving any locations of their adult children.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. The obituary, that's actually fairly old school way for scammers to get identity, kind of be able to come up with a story. It was very common with the grandparent scam, still is. They get information from an obituary. They're able to make connections. They can sell basically data on people or exchange it with other criminals. It's very common. I don't know if anybody's have you ever Googled yourself? It's amazing how much information's out there. Anything that's ever been in a paper, anything that's, any lawsuit that's ever been involved, so on and so forth. But for them to be able to access that kind of information very quickly. So if they have anything at all, and a lot of times when they call you, they'll say, okay, I'm so-and-so from whichever bank or whoever they claim that they are. They'll expand on that. They'll have some information and they're looking for more. So at this point, I know that you live at such and such an address, your name is such and such, and they've got, a considerable amount of information. They said, would you be able to confirm at this time your date of birth, or, and so on and so forth. And then, people give that, or your social security number. The other thing that I had mentioned earlier.
Would you give me your date of birth or your social security number so I can confirm that I'm talking to the right person? That's what they're doing.
Another thing that I had mentioned earlier when I had the opportunity of talking with some of you individuals when you came in, one thing that just really kind of strikes a nerve is I'm in a lot of civic organizations, veteran organizations. So whether that's the Veterans of Foreign Wars or the American Legion or Sons of American Legion, every time when you have a renewal, they're always asking, can you have your date of birth? Can you have this information, that information? It strikes a nerve just because you don't know which individuals are going to have access to it. And again, if you think of it as society, if I'm a member of the VFW, I have a membership number. I've had verification to be able to get, to verify that I was in the military, that I was a veteran, so on and so forth. At this point, why do we need to keep sharing that information and distributing it? And, you get a bad actor. You get an employee that's up to no good, or if you get a volunteer or something like that. I'm not saying that it's always got nefarious intent, but it really doesn't matter when you just got scammed out of $100,000. What the intent is one thing, but the bottom line is you're a victim of a serious theft. So I think, again, when I say this is complex, we just have so much information out there.
So the obituary is for a man who is 85, 83, right? And his spouse is one of the survivors. You think she might have a little cognitive impairment coming? I'm going to guess, right? A little bit. She's grieving. And now she gets a phone call. You just see the whole recipe is there for nothing good to come out of it. That's why we keep talking about prevention. Prevention. Too good to be true, it's too good to be true. Dave?
Yeah, correct. We have a lot of, and scammers now, they can come from anywhere. A lot of times we're seeing them from overseas, but they can check your obituaries. But even if you think about that, thieves are thieves. So the old school thief, I can remember, I grew up in Winthrop, and one of my friends had said, my grandpa just died. Would you be able to come out to the farm site during the funeral, and so on and so forth? Because they knew it was a common thing back then where people would go up. If they knew that someone was at a funeral, they'd go up and kind of clean out the farm place. So, thieves have always been thieves. Now we're just seeing that, you're just expanding. It's global. It's worldwide. So people are taking advantage of those obituaries and trying to find people when they're vulnerable.
Right. I'll get you, I'm right next to him.
Just off the subject of how much material they can get on you if they just Google you. So this article that was done on me the other day, the reporter who did it, Ruth, she sat down, she had all this information on me. She said, I just took this off the internet. I Googled you. And I couldn't believe how much background she had pulled off of me. And Dave's grandma used to babysit me out on the farm. I was surprised they didn't have her name in there and how often she changed my diaper.
The one thing I think Ruth missed, did she get your military service?
No, I wasn't.
Oh, okay. I thought you had military background like Dave and me. But yeah, that's interesting you bring that up. Just Google. I'm gonna get to you.
I don't know if the police have anything with this, but everything I've seen when I went to Vegas was timeshares. And even when you make a reservation on the phone, they'll say, could you hold the line so you can answer this questionnaire? And they try and twist your arm and get you to put some earnest money, $200, to get some vacation down the road. And it turns out to be something that is a complete scam to try to get you to buy a timeshare.
So here, thank you. And I don't want to get away from your timeshare, but it reminded me of the calls I've been getting the last few months. I hear police, so a lot of calls come in, right? And they're scam. Why? Because it pops up as a scam, right? Everybody got that, right? You've seen that. From what I understand, the telephone companies, T-Mobile, et cetera, the reason they know to block or create the scam title for that phone number is enough people have put it into their phone to block it. And that triggers them to treat that as a scam number. That's how I understand it. Not every number that comes into my phone yet is scam likely. Right here, right now. But every now and then I'll answer. My daughter up in Duluth, she goes, yeah, sometimes I just answer it and I don't say anything. And because it was at the last workshop, one of the bankers said they need 3.7 seconds of your voice, and you remember that, don't you? Yes, and if they get a snippet of 3.7 seconds of your voice, they can build out a whole speech for you in your own voice. So I'll hear something, police, let me transfer you to a recorded line. And it sounds very convincing. And I know it's a scam because I got good teachers in these fraud seminars. Have you heard about that one?
In law enforcement, generally when these scammers are always trying to strike emotion. So one very common emotion that makes people panic is fear. So what they'll do is they'll say, we have a warrant for your arrest. I'm calling you. Well, we are not calling you for warrants for arrest. No law enforcement agency is doing that. But the scammers will do that. And they'll have our names. We've even had, when we did the last presentation, shortly before that, there had been a scam that had me down, Dave Borkert, chief of police, and they were contacting people saying that, basically I was going out to make an arrest on such and such. Well, most people that knew me are like, Dave Borkert's making an arrest? Like something's not right there. But in seriousness, the scammers would try to identify local. They can figure out that I work for the police department, or there was one, I think it was with Chief Deputy Jeremy Reed. And Andrew, he is introduced as investigator, which he recently got promoted to chief deputy. So I'm just pointing that out. So congratulations. But the former one had been on chief deputy Jeremy Reed, who was his predecessor for chief deputy. But it was a scam that was going out, and it's just try to make that local connection, scare people, and then individuals felt compelled. And there's people who fell for it. You know, they asked for bail money. They asked for you to go and get some gift cards. Well, I mean, we in law enforcement will never ever have your bail paid with gift cards, but it worked. So I mean, like I said, they'll try different, and if they can get one person to bite on it, they've made money. But unfortunately, there's more than one person that fell for that. So talking about thousands and thousands of dollars, and they change tactics constantly, change numbers. A lot of times they'll even change their phone numbers, start up everything, because it doesn't take them long to get back into business. So it's very complicated. Very complex.
The foundation seems to be, it's too good to be true, or fear. And then from there, they just pivot off of whatever the scam is. I've got one here. Oh, my balance. Was it you?
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be big amounts to be scammed. I received an email or text from EasyPass. Pay it or we're going to report you to the law enforcement. My husband was out and about, and I thought, oh, he went through an EasyPass, I'll just pay for it. He got home, and he said, no. So I called, we live in Nicollet County, so I called the Nicollet County Sheriff's Department and asked if they've heard of that, and they said, yeah. So I called my credit card company right away, and they canceled my card and sent me a new one. Point being, if I wouldn't have did that, now they have my credit card, my information, they could go to bigger things. And another thing that happened, it's embarrassing to have it happen to you when you think about it. I had ordered something online and they sent the wrong product. And this was almost $700. Sent the wrong product. I called them back. They just said, thank you for contacting us. I'm glad you're enjoying your product. So then I said, sent a picture of what they sent, and I also had a picture of what I had ordered. Nothing. So then I contacted the Better Business Bureau. They tried to help me. Then they said, we've done all we can, which they did try to contact them. Contacted the credit union, and they said, yeah, this is a fraud. We're giving them 3 months to send your money back. We're putting the money back into your account, but don't spend it until you have the 3-month thing. So not only going to, it's taking steps to find out the information, and being embarrassed is one part of it, but taking account for your actions is another.
That EasyPass, that came up in May, and I don't remember, again, which panel, but it came up. Talk to the audience about that scam.
I'm not real familiar with that scam. The scams keep varying. Have either one of you had any experience with that?
So the EasyPass, she probably explained it as well as I can. You're going to get this notification on your phone that you owe money, and it's EasyPass. And if you've traveled at all, you know there's states with toll roads, and that they've gone away from toll booths, and they use EasyPass or FastPass or something like that. So they're counting on the majority of people being familiar with EasyPass and counting on that maybe you were recently out of state. And I've got a trip coming up. Where's my banker? We talked through this. I got a trip coming up, and I'm going to go through states with EasyPass, and I'm trying to figure out what's the best way to do this. Because what they do is I don't have the little box to put up on my windshield or on the dashboard that does the automatic deduction. So they take photos of your plates, they amass all the tolls that I went through in Illinois or New York or wherever, and then I can either go online, look it up, and pay the bill, or I'll get something in the mail. But that's Easy Pass. And you might, if you were out of state, you might think, well, I do owe this. I was hoping they wouldn't notice, you know, that kind of thing. Somebody right here, yeah.
This is the second time I received it, but yesterday I got an email from New Ulm Telecom, which I thought it was New Ulm Telecom, but it said, please verify your email address. So I thought, oh, that's kind of strange. So I called Telecom, and they said, no, that's a scam. So kind of keep that in mind. Also, and I see the girls back there in the corner, but can you verify to everyone what a secure email, not email, what a secure website is? Making sure that you've got your HTTP/ or somebody can do that, please.
Yeah, that's probably not a question for us. We're cops.
So in the website world, most of them, I think, now have it. If it's HTTP and you don't see HTTPS, S stands for secure. So if it's HTTP and they're starting to look for money from you, that might be a red flag. I'm glad you caught that and brought that up. I had another hand up here. Where? You? Yeah.
Just another thing to maybe be aware of, and especially at the end of the year when people are looking for donations, maybe you want extra tax donations or whatever. I've been contacted by the National Police Association, Fire Association, and Sheriff's Association at some point in my life. Maybe you want to address, how do you know when it's safe to donate to those types of organizations, which maybe we would all fall for, because we certainly want those organizations to succeed. Any thoughts on that? Anybody else get those types of calls?
I think there are some legitimate agencies out there. I know my mom gets one as well, and I always tell her just to say she gave it at the office. So, I even asked her once just to, say where, she lives in Faribault, so how much of that goes to the Faribault Police Department? And they didn't have an answer, and that's one question you want to always ask is, where is it going to? How are they going to benefit, especially if it's a nationwide thing? And so I'm always a little leery about giving to national organizations. I mean, there's obviously some good ones out there, but when they're representing law enforcement, if you want to give money to law enforcement, I would just give it to your local agency versus a national type entity.
We're going to run over a little bit, okay? So, but we are going to wrap up fairly, probably at the most 10 minutes. I'm way back in the corner. I know you guys are fighting sun and snow. Stacy with Bank Midwest has a question or observation.
I just wanted to touch base on the comment over in the corner about the tillable land for sale that's really not for sale. That is a growing trend right now. And I've heard of a couple of instances out of northern Iowa where somebody has driven up to their their lake home, and it was torn down. And it had been sold. They didn't know about it. And it was the same situation. They sold it, and it was a case of identity theft. Sold it from underneath them. Another one was a farmland. It was in the process of being sold. So basically the bottom line is, like in your son's situation, if they were using his name, his information is a case of identity theft. He'll want to take care of that if he hasn't already. Make sure he, gets involved with that piece of it and, just covers his identity theft piece.
I had forgotten about this was my wife's sister. Her direct report at the Bank of America is the CFO at the Bank of America. She lives in Charlotte. And I remember 15 years ago, she let my wife know that their accounts, and he's one of the highest paid attorneys in all of North Carolina. Their accounts had been emptied. It took a Bank of America senior VP, one direct report, or a direct report to the CFO. She said, I spent 8 hours a day for a month trying to rebuild and get everything back. And we haven't even talked about identity theft. And that's another topic that we could spend about, well, going on 3 hours on. Where am I? I'm here. I've got one right here who won't shake hands with me.
My wife told me that.
It's the cold weather. She doesn't want to get cold.
No, my wife had sneeze surgery, and she said, "Don't shake anybody's hand because I don't want to get something." So I just want to have one observation and one kind of thing that I do. When I have a call and I don't know the number, I never answer it. I figure if it's legitimate, you're going to get a voicemail, and it's worked for me, and it's worked for my family. It makes you feel not so stressful because you're looking at that number, you don't know it. Is it good or is it bad? And it's kind of gets to you. But if you do it that way, the legitimate one is about 99%. They'll give you a voicemail. So then you don't have to worry about that, maybe even did something wrong. Because you hear the things where you can talk and they'll get your voice. You got to think about that too nowadays with that AI. It's getting to be so ridiculous. And I'm kind of feeling sorry. The other thing is what I get out of it, I feel depressed here because when you hear this stuff, you can't get anything done accountable. These people must be doing more and more of it and getting away with it. And it's kind of tough when you hear that it never gets better. It almost gets worse. But if like with this and seminars, at least you got a way of stopping it before it happens. I think that's why it's really good. That's my opinion.
That was an excellent suggestion. If you don't recognize the number, don't answer it. There's a nice first step in solving this whole issue too. I saw a banker over here who wanted to chime in.
Yeah, we didn't mention this, I don't think, when we were up at the panel, but, we're coming into the holiday season where a lot of people are going to be doing shopping online, shopping in stores, and we also see an increase in fraud. So, just be very cognitive of where you're putting your information, who you're giving it out to, because these fraudsters really take advantage of, the holidays, the time of the year, things like that. So that's what I wanted to.
Very good. I got one more banker.
And the suggestion with the website with the HTTPS is a great suggestion. However, fraudsters can also make secure websites. So don't take that as, well, I know it was secure because the S was there. It may not be, but definitely look for that S going forward.
I got one more over here. Oh, excuse me. I got one more over here, and then we're going to wrap up.
I had one suggestion from my brother who's a banker, and he's told me,
Where does he bank?
he's in North Carolina.
North Carolina?
Yeah, but he said to lock your credit report, and you can put a lock on it to where no one can create credit cards or any other accounts in your name, and then, or you freeze it. And then, if you know you're going to go buy a car or you're going to a house or whatever, you can always unfreeze those anytime you want. But that keeps a lot of the background potential of people creating things in your name or stealing.
I remember that coming up last time too. The bankers spent a lot of time, or not a lot, but they spent time on this whole concept of a credit freeze. I know I said one last question, but she's so pretty, I got to let her.
No, I was just thinking of having those, what is it, the card protectors that they can't, someone can't read off of them?
Talking about the RFID.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's good to have on your credit cards too.
correct. Yeah, there's some credit cards that emit an RFID tag, where you can do the transaction just by near field. And of course, our fraudsters have figured out a way of how to snatch those out of the air. So they make certain wallets that mask that RFID tag so that it doesn't emit when you have it in your wallet. So, yep, absolutely.
Very good, excellent. I teach some classes in community education, and, oh, by the way, where is Amber? Amber, stand up, please. Come away from the sun so people can see you. Many of you may remember Carol Johnson. Wasn't it Carol? Was she the community ed director for years and years and years? Who am I thinking of? Carol Davis, thank you. Sounds like a name on that email, right? Thomas Fisher, Carol Davis. And then that was followed up with the Crystal Flack, whose husband is a deputy. Is Crystal's husband in law enforcement? Oh, okay. For some reason, I thought he was. And now it's Amber Backus, your new New Ulm ISD 88 Community Education Director. And I got to get my classes into her by close of business on Friday. But that's another topic. All right. At the end of my classes, what I like to ask people is, what did you learn? What's your takeaway today? You're driving away. Chris Mullinoff, May 28th, St. Paul Lutheran, closing line, I'll remember it till I die. When did you know you were being defrauded? When I ran out of money. What's that line that you yourself heard today? Or concept maybe is a better way to put it. Maybe not the exact words, but this is the interactive part of the program. Yes, please, Columbia, shout it out. Put on your, yes, go out there with the full armor. Yes. Too good to be true. It's too good to be true. What'd you learn?
I learned what I believe Renee had on her paper on the outset, that the only way you're going to really be safeguarded is through prevention. Because like he said, accountability, forget about it.
They can't, Chuck Hansen can't get to the culprits that did this. You need to be the first line of defense on scams and frauds. It's the way it is. What else? Yes, please.
Stop, think, and verify. Don't do anything right away.
Stop, think, verify. Renee, what's that line you used when Chris and you and I were on Community of Affairs with Brian Filzen on KNUJ, our good friends? What was the line you used? Do you remember? You had a funny, witty line. Oh, hold on.
Yeah, it was say no, save your dough.
Just say no and save your dough. All right. Yes. I was.
Buy yourself some time. I have an appointment I have to get to. Will you give me a number? I'll call you back. You have time to think. You have time to say, if I'm not calling that person back, I'm not answering that phone. Oh, we're talking about the police department. Great. I love that. I'm going down there to talk to them about donating money. All kinds of things. IRS. I've got a brother who works for that. I wanted to talk to him about it before I answered it. Give me a number. I'll call you back. Take time to think. And 10 seconds isn't enough. Some people have to think about it overnight. Once they say, I've got an emergency out of town this weekend. My granddaughter is sick and I'm out of town. You give me a number, I'll call you back. Then you have time to think, say, this doesn't make sense. A lot of times when you get a phone call and you hear all this noise going on, all these different people immediately say, this sounds like that, but that didn't mean. Use a few other things you use to say, it's not important right now. No.
I think your overarching point is they're lying to you. It's okay to lie to them.
I even came up with one is, you know what? Before I talk to you about this, I've got to sell some Girl Scout cookies. Can I sell you some? I can't talk about your issue till you answer mine. They're done.
Very good. Excellent. One last takeaway. Just shout it out.
Get rid of your phones and your computer.
Oh, there you go. You don't want to get defrauded? Get rid of all the electronics. Excellent. All right. So last time, we did not let the New Ulm Journal get a photo of the panel because I sent the panel on their way. So I'd like all the panelists that remained, I think Stacy scooted out from Bank Midwest, but I'd like everybody else to come up here and we'll let Amy get some photos. Thank you for coming, by the way. This is helping save Brown County, New Ulm, one fraud at a time, and give yourselves a hand.